it's not easy to open up. It's hard to open up.
But I didn't know it was happening to me.
I always try and be strong when I'm actually crumbling. 50-50 podcast. Hi everyone, I'm Yas.
And I'm Yel.
And welcome back to 50-50.
Yes, welcome back to 50-50. And do not forget to hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes out every single week. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And yeah, also, did you know that it's episode 23?
I cannot believe it. They say that podcasts usually don't even get to episode 20. They're like, usually they just end by episode 20.
Yes.
Podcasts are done.
I know, I heard that too. That's why I was like, wow, so we're doing pretty good. And I also heard that there's so many statistics out there, but
Yeah.
I heard another one that was like a lot of them don't make it past episode 12 for some reason.
Wow.
I don't know why the number 12, but they were like a lot don't make it past 12 because of, whatever reason.
Yeah.
It can be a lot to coordinate with another person too.
It is a lot, yeah.
Yeah, to just coordinate different schedules. I mean, luckily we're sisters, so it makes it so much easier.
It makes it a lot easier that we're sisters, but I can see how it could be so difficult
Exactly.
with different scheduling conflicts,
Exactly. And luckily we already spend a lot of time together anyways.
Yeah.
So it's easier for us.
It's just so natural for us to just
Yeah.
talk, and it's like we continue our day because we always love talking to each other, so it's perfect.
Exactly, yeah. And we have always like endless things to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just can't believe it. This is episode 23. So I just feel like so proud of ourselves and everything. And I feel like there's so much more yet to uncover. Like,
yeah, slowly but surely we can open up a little bit more because it's not easy to open up. It's hard to open up, and that's actually a perfect leeway into our topic because talking about like anxieties and overcoming anxieties, and one of the main issues for me has been, which I didn't even know that I had this problem. I mean, you didn't even know that I had it.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me to talk about my feelings.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that it's so difficult for me to open up and say how I feel. Like, I can tell you, I don't like this situation, or I don't like this person,
Right.
or I don't like what's happening. But actually going in and saying, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel, I don't know, taken advantage of, I feel, especially when it comes to like anger, sadness, I feel like grief, like different feelings of grief, because we've dealt with a lot of grief in our family, and we've had a lot of people pass away. A lot of people pass away so quick. Within, I want to say, like 2-3 years, we've had more than a handful of people pass away that are close to our family and stuff like that.
It was
very,
like within
very
2
close.
years. It was
Yeah.
like a lot of deaths happened in the family, which was so sad. But yeah, like you're saying, that's what we want to talk about today, like anxieties and everything, because we've dealt with anxiety. I feel like everybody in the world deals with anxiety in one way or another, because it is just like, that's how I always have viewed it. I know we've talked about this so much, like it's just another human emotion. It really is. Like, it's just like, how you have fear and like, you're nervous, whatever. Anxiety is just, I feel like, a part of everyday life. Right. But there are times where it gets out of hand, and like everybody has different levels of anxiety. I believe that too, of course, 100%.
Yeah.
So this is just our experiences with it. And yeah, like you were saying, I didn't even know, like you were like that you had a problem sharing your feelings. Like you're saying that you didn't even know. I didn't even know either, because we always talk so much. And after talking even more and more, we realized that like, yeah, a lot of times like that's something that you struggle with, where you wouldn't say how you feel, even though we were talking about a subject like so much, like for so many hours. I feel like we would talk about a subject, and I thought our feelings, but I guess you were never really sharing exactly how it made you feel.
Exactly.
So
I had that like inside of me, and after having all this grief happen to our family, and thank God we never have had many issues in our family really at all.
Yeah.
Especially dealing with grief.
Until that happened.
Yeah. So I was just bottling it all up until my body was just like, it's too much, and then it came out in ways of like anxiety, like nervousness, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and all of that. And thankfully now I'm on the other side of this, so I'm so happy that it's over. But when you're dealing with that, it's horrible, because you're like, when is this ever going to end? Yeah. And it's just, you feel like it's so overwhelming. That's what I was feeling. And the only way to get through it, the only way to get over is to get through it. That's what I mean. And you have to feel all the emotions. And I had to literally talk about my feelings and literally sit down with myself and be like, this is what I feel. Yeah. And I feel sad. And I'm so sad, and I'm hurt, and I feel guilty, or I feel this, I feel angry, and get those emotions out. That was the only way that I was able to get through the anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hardest part too, because like you were saying, when you're in it and everything, it's so hard to like not be consumed by it.
Yeah.
Because that's what ends up happening. You end up getting so consumed by whatever that issue is that's causing you the anxiety at the time or whatever. Or you don't even know what it is, but like the anxiety itself just consumes you. So it's just, it is really crazy.
Just to be clear, we have never been diagnosed with anxiety.
Yeah.
We have never taken medication for anxiety. So this is all coming through, like, I guess...
just to regular people.
Regular people, which everybody... I mean, anxiety is a normal emotion, like we said previously. Yeah. But I just wanted to clear that up.
I think that's good to add that disclaimer. Also, we're not doctors or nothing. This is literally just us talking about our experiences. Like my sister said, we don't have any type of like diagnosis or nothing like that. It's just literally things that we've gone through in life. And, you know, you end up knowing that it's like anxiety because you Google things, you hear from other people.
I mean, and you know what a panic attack is and what an anxiety attack is. You know what
and
those
we all
things
know from
are.
social media. Like, I feel like...
Yeah.
I even heard somebody say this, that it's like the epidemic of anxiety because like everybody has anxiety, like, but of course, like we say, there's different levels to it because there's people out there who are clinically diagnosed and they have like, you know, their anxiety is a lot more, it affects their everyday life forever, you know, like, or like whatever the case might be. But point is, we are just saying our experiences and it's, you know, what we have felt through our life, like through different experiences. So for me, when I was younger, I didn't even know, but I guess I was having panic attacks. And I was so young. I was like, the first time that I remember, I was like 12. And then like 13 is when I started noticing more, but I didn't know what was happening to me. Our parents had no idea. You know, our parents, again, like we've said it a million times, but our parents they're foreign. They're from other countries. They didn't grow up here in the United States, and it's not something that they're used to or anything. And we didn't know about it much either, but I would just feel like I couldn't breathe. Like I just would feel like, you know, and mine all started because of like health issues. Yeah. Because I had like, just stomach pain, which was nothing, but it just caused me, and I went to the doctor for my stomach pain and everything, and I was fine. Like, I ended up being diagnosed with like IBS, but it was a weird diagnosis because the doctor like yelled it at me. So I'm not exactly even sure if I really even ever had that or not.
And you know, IBS is linked so clearly with, you know, when people are anxious and stuff like that. It goes hand in hand. Your stomach and your brain are so connected.
That's what they say, like your gut and your brain are so connected. So it could have just been, you know, a byproduct of what I was feeling or whatever. But anyways, that really started for me, like kind of just like being like having like health anxiety, just even me having like a little pain here or there, or like I feel like a heart palpitation or whatever. I end up thinking I have like heart problems, or like go down this hole. Google. That's what I was going to say. And this is back in the day, because I'm a new person now. I don't Google anymore. And you know, and like you told me that too. Yeah. You were like, stop Googling your symptoms.
It's so hard. And I told you because I was doing that.
Yeah.
I used to work at a place, it's not a doctor's office or anything like that, but it's medical things that I would do, right?
And you came in contact with a lot of different medical issues.
A lot of medical issues that really rocked my world. Yeah. And I would start Googling it.
Other people's medical issues.
Not my medical issues, but I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And when I did that, I went down a hole.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I have this, I have that, I have here.
Yeah.
I felt like I was like in medical school.
Yeah.
You know?
Like learning about all these
diseases and all of a sudden diagnosing myself.
Yeah.
That was the worst thing that I could do.
I know.
And so then I told you that.
You told me that, and I didn't listen at first because I would be like, because you know, in your head you think like knowledge is power.
Exactly.
So you're like, oh, but if I know this stuff, then even if I don't have it right now, maybe one day down the line, if I display these symptoms, or if, you know, my mom, my dad, my aunt, uncle, whatever, like I'm like, I can help diagnose them
and like help prevent
anything big from happening, whatever.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way, but that's really the mentality that I had for such a long time. And it wasn't until like literally recently, like within the last, I want to say year or so, where I really was like, I'm not Googling anymore. Like for real. Like now, even if something happens, I don't Google anything. Like, if it's anything like health related, of course, like other things, like if I cut myself, that's different, because I'm like, that's not going to lead to any disease or whatever.
How do you clean a cut? But even that can get bad, because like if you don't clean a cut, then you're going to bleed and die out or whatever.
I know. Google will have you saying you're dying. Like I can't tell you how many times like I've like gotten like blood test results back, okay, that are perfectly 100% normal, but there'll be like a word in there that I don't understand. So I go and I Google it, and then that will tell me already that like I'm gonna die, like with cancer, some type of like all this crazy stuff would pop out. And then when I end up having like a meeting with my doctor where we went through the blood results, I would ask him those specific questions. I would write these things down, and he'd be like, no, he's like that's not what it means in this case. And like basically everything was 100% normal.
Yeah.
And I literally would freak myself out to the point that, you know, I would be like crying.
Yeah.
Because I really believe these things. Like and it's like, it's not like I'm making them up, because I'm reading it on Google. And Google is saying that this is exactly, and I would put in like all the details possible. And it would still like, so my point is, it's horrible for you.
It is. It's horrible. And you're getting your information from like reputable sources, because it's like, you know, you're seeing it's not like .com or whatever.
Right.
You know that it's like from different institutions, you know?
Exactly.
Medical places. And then
so it'd be like, the Cleveland Clinic, like, you know, different things.
Mayo Clinic.
Mayo Clinic, WebMD. Is that bad?
Oh my God, WebMD.
WebMD is crazy.
But you know what I have thought about this whole Google thing is they literally, I feel like they have to say you're going to die and the worst thing's going to happen to you. I think in a way to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So you just go to the doctor.
That's what I think so too. That's like what, you know, once you like start rationalizing a little bit, because first I go off the rails. Like that's what happened to me first. I just went like literally off the rails and I'm like, oh my God, like this is literally my diagnosis, whatever. And you know, it doesn't help also that in the past I have diagnosed myself and others based off Google and I was correct.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't anything crazy those times. It was just little things like, I was like, oh, you probably have this and that, whatever I would tell different people. And then it ended up being true. So that also kind of fueled my like.
Well, but yeah, because it gave you like, it said, well, you're right.
Yeah.
So using Google.
Like you're doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing because you actually diagnosed somebody.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because, I mean, did you really diagnose them? You know, no, right?
I didn't.
But you thought in your mind, you know, you're like, wow, this is not false information.
Exactly. Because they would end up, like, they weren't waiting for me to diagnose them. They ended up going to the doctor. Then I would be like, oh, like, what did the doctor say? And the doctor would say exactly what I had read online. Yeah. So that kind of made me have this, like, false, like, thinking that I am doing something correct. And, like, you know, like I was saying, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power 100% in other circumstances. But in this type of circumstance where you're learning about things or you're reading things on Google that you know nothing about because we're not medically trained. Like if you are a medical student, I guess, or even a doctor yourself and you Google, maybe you're able to like decipher what applies to you or your patient or whatever. But I'm not. And I had to come to terms with that. Yeah. And even the doctors would tell me when I'd be like, but I read this on Google. Many doctors have told me, stop Googling things.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just stop.
That's the first thing that they say.
Yeah. And that honestly helped me a lot with like my health anxieties and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say that I'm like cured of it because there's always that thing in the back of my head where I'm like, well, maybe I have this. But I learned a little trick that I read online actually where it's like when you have these thoughts that are like, you know, for example, I have like a pain in my knee. Oh my God, I probably have cancer. Like, you know, that's what always leads.
Or like a blood clot. You think you're having a blood clot.
You have
a pain, some kind of pain in your leg and you think
it's a blood clot. Exactly. That's like extreme thought, okay? Because blood clots are not something that just happens on the regular day-to-day life unless you have a blood clotting disease or you have the different type of, you know, characteristics that would apply to that. Right. But if you're just a regular person, especially depending on your age, you're
overall
less
a healthy
likely.
person. Yeah, because we're talking about here, like we're two, thank God, you know, we're two healthy people.
Exactly. So like if you are, you know,
predisposed to this kind of stuff.
Predisposed, that's a different thing. But I'm talking about it in the event that you're not, that is a pretty extreme negative thought we can say, right?
Exactly.
Because that's supposing that something negative is happening to you. So I learned this online that to like kind of balance yourself out even in your head so you don't start going down like a hole of like, oh my God, like this is the terrible. You have to think of, okay, if you're thinking of the worst case scenario, then also think of the best case scenario.
Right.
So what is the best case scenario? That it's nothing and your pain's about to go away. And I'm not saying ignore your things, but it just kind of balances it in your head. So then you're just like not thinking only the most negative, that you can also think about what about the positive option, because just like in everything in life, there is always, if there's an option for something negative, there's also the option for something positive.
Yeah.
But
so you're like, what if it's a blood clot, but also what if it's just the pain?
Exactly.
Because there's always that what if. I feel like with being anxious or whatever, you're always thinking what if.
Exactly.
What if it's this? What if that happens? What if that happens? What if I pass out? What if I have a heart attack? Because, you know, when you have anxiety and stuff, your heart starts beating so fast. You hear it in your ears and everything. And you get lightheaded. You get dizzy. You get this. Yeah. So what if?
Yeah.
It makes you more anxious.
Exactly.
So you can, like you said, what if it's not?
Yeah.
What if it's just a pain?
Why do we have to think the negative option? Why do we have to think? And like, that's the thing with anxiety that I was reading to online. Like, people have health anxiety specifically, okay?
Yeah.
It's like, you always think that you have the like deadliest thing. The
most intense one.
Exactly. And so that's like just a thing that you have to like learn with yourself and like kind of just even have a conversation with yourself and be like, you know what? If I think that I can have, like, why am I thinking I have the most negative thing? Why can't I be positive and think I'm having, you know, the most positive thing, right? So, like, anyways, you find a balance, definitely still go to the doctor. Like, if you have some type of concern, obviously still go to the doctor. But I'm more saying, like, because I know this is, like, my situation, how it was. When you call the doctor, you don't have an appointment for the next day. You have to wait, like, a week, 2 weeks, even a month maybe till you get that appointment. And it's, like, from when you make that phone call to when you have the appointment, that's the time frame that I'm talking about, that I would usually, like, just go down a negative hole of just being like, I'm going to die.
And that's what I was going to say. when you make that phone call to the doctor and you tell them your symptoms, because they always ask your symptoms.
Yeah.
If they really think that you are on the verge of death, they wouldn't tell you, oh yeah, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
No.
They're like, they will tell you, go to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they'll say, call the ambulance.
Exactly.
Because that's the reality. And another truth is, if you really feel that horrible, are you really just going to call your doctor and just sit there and just wait?
Exactly.
Or are you going to call 911? Because, and get help immediately.
Exactly.
Because if you are really thinking that this is the verge of death.
Yeah.
You're not going to call your doctor and just sit there and wait for a 2-week appointment. No. I don't think so. I think if you really believe that you're on the verge of death, you're having a heart attack, you're whatever it is, that you have a blood clot or whatever, you're not just going to sit there and wait.
You're calling the ambulance.
You're calling the ambulance.
Yeah,
you're for sure calling the ambulance. So that's also another thing that I always tell myself. I'm like, what do I need medical attention like now?
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And I know that deep down inside I don't. So that also helps ease my anxieties.
Exactly. Yeah.
And another thing is being a hypochondriac.
Yes. Oh my God. That's like what health anxiety is basically.
Yeah,
it's just like being a hypochondriac and thinking that like you have everything. Like if anybody mentions something, I'm like in my head, I'm like, oh my God. Like I'll be like, what? And that's the thing.
That's the thing.
I even ask questions. I'll be like, and
God.
that's a bad thing. I'm like, because I actually am curious to know, like, they'll be like, oh, like let's say my mom or my dad, it's usually something like that. They got, they have this and that. And I'd be like, oh, like, how do they,
symptoms?
What are the symptoms? Like, how do they find out that they have it? And like, we've talked about this many times too. People will always tell you, like, they're not going to tell you the full story because they're not going to sit there and like take 2 hours to say the story. They tell you the nice, short and sweet story as like everybody does, right?
And it's usually something like they were sitting down reading a book.
And then boom,
they felt it. And then you're like, oh God, so when I'm reading a book, I'm going to feel it.
Yeah.
No.
Or they'll be like, like whatever. Something so common because they'll be, but what you don't know is all their previous history. You don't know their
They used
health.
to be smokers or something. Or
their current health status. You don't know what health issues they might have because somebody's not going to disclose all that information in just a quick conversation that you're having. Now, if you're sitting down and having like a heart-to-heart for like hours and hours, maybe then they might say that stuff. But in a quick conversation where somebody's talking about like, I don't know, like because I remember this happening, like somebody that I knew had like pancreatitis. And you just think like, oh, now I have pancreatitis. No, there's so many different reasons in their health and whatever, and the reason why they had that. And like none of those apply to me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So like that's just an example, but it's just like being a hypochondriac, as you're saying. It's, you have to kind of really talk to someone and be like, no, I don't have everything that I hear.
And not just that, but also be like, I have no relation to this person.
Yeah.
So there's no way that I can have what my neighbor has. My neighbor has, colon cancer.
Yeah.
They don't, but I'm just saying as an example.
Yeah.
My neighbor has colon cancer. And now all of a sudden I feel weird things in my stomach.
Yeah.
So, or my bowels are different or something. And you're like, now I have colon cancer. No, that's not how it is.
Yeah.
Because your neighbor has it, you don't have it.
Exactly.
You have no relation to them. Those stuff are usually genetic. So those things you need to like work through and tell yourself no.
Yeah. And another thing for us, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like this like came a lot from us because of even just our parents and like just being from a different generation, because obviously like our parents or grandparents, they're very different generations, where and they were born and raised in different countries. Like we're saying, our family is not from the US, so I don't know, but I feel like also a lot of times we would see our family members that live abroad that they would like not know what they had. And then they go to the hospital and boom, they're like diagnosed with this, that, and the other. And I feel like a lot of times you and I kind of maybe even picked up these traits unwittingly, but because we would try to like help our family members, even if they were overseas, like they're not around us. So we'd be like, I would ask my mom, like, wait, what did they say their symptoms were? And I would put that like in Google and like try to like help them in a way. So I thought I obviously wasn't helping them at all. But I don't know. I don't know if you feel like that kind of helped, like not help, but cause us to have, fueled our like health anxiety and everything, because we like they wouldn't really go to the doctor. So then it's every time they would end up going to the hospital, there's always something so crazy that would happen.
Yeah. For me, I think, yes, I see how I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I also have like, for example, our grandma, she passed away with heart failure. Yeah. And that was detrimental to us, to our family and everything, because it was so sudden. Mm-hmm. We didn't know that she had it. And by the time they found out what she had, she was already in literally her last days of life.
Yeah.
And from the moment that we found out to the moment that she passed away wasn't even a week.
Yeah.
So it was very, very sudden. And so the way that they came about finding out was, my grandma retained a lot of water.
Yeah.
And in her lungs. And so everyone in the family abroad believed that she had like a pneumonia. like some kind of bronchitis issue or something like that.
Yeah.
Something pulmonary. And then after that is when they found out, oh, she actually has heart failure.
Right.
And so in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm younger also at this point. I'm like, oh my gosh, her lungs caused the heart thing. And so if I have something wrong with my lungs, then I'm going to have a heart problem.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's completely opposite. And it's not even like that,
No, it happened to be that her type of heart failure caused her to retain water, which caused the water to start retaining in the lungs as well. So it's basically, it's not even like...
It's not even how...
It's not the correlation that you're thinking, like that the lungs cause the heart. It's actually the heart issue that ended up like manifesting itself in the lungs.
Yeah. And so, I was thinking already, because this is part of the hypochondriac thing, like, oh my God, my back hurts and it could be my lungs, which could lead to a heart problem. And in reality, if you have lung issues, it's not even going to hurt in your back.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. That's not even where the pain is, and you're not going to feel a heart failure. That's another thing that I had to understand too, for myself. And I was just like, and it's so hard when you go through these traumatic things, because it was traumatic for us because it happened so quickly, and it's our grandmother, and we're
very close to her.
We were very close to her. She lived with us and everything. Yeah. So those things are really hard on you. Mm-hmm. And when you don't understand things, they can hit you a certain way. And that for me, it caused, like a health anxiety.
Yeah.
And it took a while to move through it. And the only way, like I already said it, but you have to face your fears. Yeah. You have to face your fears, because if you're scared, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to work my heart out because I'm going to be, it's going to start racing. Right. Well, in reality, think about it. If you don't work your heart out, you're actually going to make it worse for yourself, because it's healthy to
work out,
to
do some cardio, get your heart pumping. Everything's actually healthy for your heart, makes your heart stronger. Exactly. Instead of thinking the opposite. Yeah. And for me too, like from that, from our situation with our grandma, from what that did for me was like, it kind of like birthed my also like, or not even birthed, but more of my anxiety for health, because I'm like, had we known what she had the people around her, especially because we weren't around her at the moment when that, all that happened. I'm like, had they known what she had, she would have maybe lasted longer, had more years of her life, because I'm like, maybe she would have had the proper medication, the proper treatment and everything. So those are things for me that I'm like that. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I could have helped her by Googling or whatever, which is not true. I could have never helped her by Googling, because I would have never, I don't think I would have ever got into that diagnosis. I'm not a doctor. So I just I wouldn't even know what the correct symptoms are to type in, because our grandma had a lot of symptoms that now after the fact, we realize were all because of her heart failure. Yeah, but we didn't know that at the time. So all that stuff of like not knowing made me think that, knowing more is better. But when it comes to these health anxiety things, and if you can't handle it, like myself, I know that I can't handle it. Knowledge actually isn't power for me in that thing. That's like, it's actually destroying me to know too much about sicknesses and stuff like that. Yeah. And now I'm a lot stronger because now so it just really just has to do with your whole, like how you're feeling at the moment. So like if I know that I feel some type of thing, and if I Google it's not going to affect me, then I may Google. Right now I'm not at that point, because I just don't want to Google anymore. Rather, if I really have a concern, just make an appointment with my doctor and wait for my doctor to tell me.
And don't Google exactly to that appointment.
And don't Google till I get to that appointment, because if you don't have like health anxiety, or if you don't, that stuff, you are able to just like be like, okay, this is a possibility, but it's not the end all be all. Then Googling or whatever, that's fine. Like you were saying too, it's just a matter of like waiting, because that's what I learned also about like these anxieties and health anxiety things. It's like you want an answer now. And because you can't get an answer now, you're going to go out and find it. And what you end up finding is not going to be the most positive thing out there. And
it's not going to be the right thing. That's the reality. It's not going to be the right thing.
It's not going to be the right thing, because like we have said in the past, you need to take into consideration your whole history. You are so different from every single person on this planet is different from the other. Exactly. Nobody's exactly the same. Even identical twins have different health issues.
Exactly.
So it's just like you cannot rely on Google, which is just telling you something general, to know your whole history and to know everything about you. Like even the most basic is like your height and weight. They don't even know that, because there's nowhere that you type that in when you're typing in your symptoms. Right. So, all that is just to take into consideration, because you just have to like not want everything at that very moment. And I think us being impatient also led to us wanting to get, answer so quickly, and we end up just hurting ourselves, because then we're suffering. And I know I can speak for myself. Yeah. I end up like just suffering.
You end up crying. It's a suffering. It is suffering because anxiety is not fun. And anybody that has ever had any kind of anxiety, if you had anxiety, just being anxious or even having panic attacks, you know that both of those things are literally the worst. Yeah. You feel horrible.
Yeah, you do.
And it takes you some time to like recuperate from that. Yeah. You know, sometimes it could take you a couple minutes, couple hours, or sometimes it takes the whole day, depending on how intense it is. And so don't Google anything, because that will make all of your symptoms worse. 100%. That's the one thing that I can say is don't Google anything.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, like we were saying, our family and everything, worrying about their health and everything, that's another one of my, I would say even current, like things that I worry about so much and anxieties is, you know, our parents' health. And our parents, thank God, they're healthy. They're so healthy. They're still young. Like, I should not be worrying about them as much as I worry about them, but I just do. That is just the type of person that I am. And you know, that's how I am and everything. And I just like constantly worry. And that is something that I've also learned to overcome, that, you know, things do happen. Like our mom has had some health issues, you know, throughout the last years.
Yeah, varying health issues,
like different things. And she's always ends up being okay. She always ends up being fine. Yeah. But at one point, I just really let those things knock me down. Like I couldn't, like, I don't know. I just felt like I let it take over my life. And that is not correct, because, you know, things happen in life, and you can't just because like this one thing happened, which to me was detrimental, but it actually wasn't detrimental, but to me it was detrimental. I was like, you know, and I even told you this, I can't do anything. I'm like, I can't even like, you know, watch this video because I need to be like focused on mom, like all these things. And like, it's just not the correct way to live. It's not the correct way to just like let things overcome your whole life and just focus only on the negative, and, you know, and just being like, there are other things going on in life. This is going to be fine. Like the doctor says she's going to be okay. Like it's going to be okay. And just like kind of believing that and moving forward. When I was in a bad place, it was hard for me to do that, because I was like, just
because it's our mom.
Yeah. And
that's the thing. It's our mom. And like, just thinking that anything would ever happen, it's terrifying, you know?
Yeah, it is.
And we're so lucky that, you know, again, thank God that mom didn't have any issues, right? In reality, I mean, she did. She had major issues, but
they were all solvable, common things
that
people
happen.
Have these type of things. She had to have the surgeries and stuff like that. These are surgeries that people have, like, end up having, and it's okay.
She wasn't at risk of anything happening to her.
Right, exactly. And she did have some complications. So that's the part when I feel like you and me, we were just like, no, we're like, of course, anything, because they were like, there's a 5% chance this can happen. Then it happened to her, and we're just like, oh my God.
Every time she had the surgery, whatever bad was gonna happen ended up happening. Yeah, which is so horrible. We were suffering for her. Of course, our mom was suffering, and we were suffering.
Yeah, and we like spiraled, and it was. You helped me so much through that too. So I thank you so much for that, because I remember like so much. I would just be like, I would just be telling you like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, you know, basically the worst things possible. And you kind of, even though I know you also were going through things too and everything. Yeah. Like you kind of were like, you know, no, like
trying to make you see, and that's, you know, that's also my issue is, and I see it right now with you saying this, you know. I always try and be strong, I feel like. And then inside when I'm actually crumbling. But I want to have my outward appearance is like rough and tough kind of thing. Yeah. Pretend like nothing hurts me or nothing has. Yeah. And that's when it's hard for me to talk about my feelings. Because I'm like, I don't want to make it worse. Right. If you're already feeling sad and this and that, and I'm trying to help you, I'm like, how can you help me? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I have felt that way too. Because I know there's times when I need to be the strong person. Yes. For you, or strong. Yes. There was a time when I needed to be strong for everyone, for my mom, for you, for so many people around us. And I that's when I crumbled, because I literally I couldn't. I just couldn't do it anymore. I don't know how I got it, like how that happened, everything. But, you know, I just couldn't take it anymore. But I learned how to move forward through that too, thankfully. And I feel like I don't want any of that stuff to happen to us again. But if it did, I feel stronger now. I feel like I
know how to handle it. And I know how to handle it too. And I know how to approach it now, that I can also have my own feelings. Exactly. And it's not going to be detrimental to you or detrimental to me. We're going to be working through it together.
Exactly. You know what's so funny? Because now that you say this, too, like I know that like you thought you were putting up a strong front and you were like supportive of everything in that moment and everything, but I knew that you weren't okay also. Do you know what I mean? So like, I feel like even that, knowing that maybe helps you too, because like, it's like, I knew that you were also worried, scared and everything like I was feeling, but so you can show that. Do you know what I mean? Like because I already kind of saw that. It's just like, you know, you didn't think you were showing it. So anyways, it's just a life lesson for all of us, you know, like sometimes even though you think you have to be like the strongest one or like, you know, not show your emotions or whatever, you may think you're putting up that like that front or that like look, but the other people may not even be seeing it that way. So it's always okay to show your emotions. That's what I just feel like, you know, bottom line. It's always okay to show your emotions, because even how you're feeling, maybe somebody else can relate to. And that's even like kind of like the point of this episode too. The reason that we want to do this and everything too is because, you know, we have anxieties. We've gone through things in life. We're touching on here on a lot of different topics, just a little bit here and there of all these different little topics. And there's so many even more things that make us anxious, but this is like, you know, the broad ones.
The broad ones, yeah.
The big ones. And, you know, maybe that helps somebody else too, because they, you know, they're going through something similar and they might feel like, what, like, why am I, because that's how I know I felt when I was going through stuff with our mom and everything, where I'm like, why am I so weak? I would think. I'm like, why am I letting this like knock me down to the point that it's knocking me down?
Yeah.
But you're not weak. We're allowed to have our moments when we crumble and everything. But the point is just kind of just having that, you know, that conversation with yourself, just like coming back to like ground zero. Because I feel like sometimes you get like in a hole, you know, and you don't have to be, you know, super above the hole or anything, but at least just being in that ground zero where you're like, okay, it's not the end of the world. There are things that can be very detrimental, but even so, you need to be able to know that not everything's going to be okay 24/7.
Yes, that's something major.
Happy is not the only emotion you're allowed to have. I feel like a lot of people, we have issues with that.
That was one of my main things that I came to terms with, is that I cannot be like, happiness is my only emotion.
Yeah.
Because that's all I wanted to be. I just wanted to be happy 24/7. I didn't want anything like to happen, especially during that time that we had so many things happening.
Yeah.
You know, in our family, I was like, I can't feel anything but happy right now. I just want happiness, happiness, happiness.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
Yeah.
In a day, you feel happy, sad, angry, mad, glad, whatever. You have so many emotions. You could feel,
we're human.
Yeah. I mean, even feeling anxious is normal.
Right.
You know, you get anxious when you're like rushing out the door.
Yeah.
That's feeling anxious.
There's certain situations that call for that feeling of anxiety. When you're like about to like present, like say in school, you have a project and you have to like present, and you don't like, you're an introvert like me. I don't like to, you know, do like speeches and whatever.
Yeah.
I would get so anxious beforehand.
Or like, for example, another thing is just simple. There's a bee coming towards you.
Yeah.
You get anxious. You start running. Your heart starts beating because you're like, oh my God, there's a bee. Like, or you don't like a bug. You're like, bugs, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just normal. So I see now that, you know, I can have all my feelings and it's okay.
Exactly.
And that doesn't mean anything. And it's just being normal. And, you know, happiness is great, but we have to go through all of our emotions too.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Some things are not going to be always happy.
Exactly. And it's okay to be a positive person, but I think it's just like about that expectation where I think, you know, we both of us were like, we had this expectation to be like the only emotion we can have is happiness. And if we feel anything other than happiness, like something is wrong, something is off. Like, and that's not true. You can't have those expectations because it's just not, you know, not reality. We all have so many different emotions, and it's okay. And like, of course, we should all strive to be happy. Why not? Because happiness is a choice. Like, we always say it's a choice, because you can choose. Like if something bad happens in your day, you can be like, oh, my whole day's ruined, whatever. But, or you can be like, it's only 10 a.m. That was just a moment.
Exactly.
Let me move on and I can be happy the rest of my day.
Yeah.
You don't have to ignore things.
Let it be a moment. Let it be a moment. Don't let it be your day.
Exactly.
Because, you know, your coffee spilled. Don't let that ruin the rest of your day.
Exactly.
It just spilled right there. Okay, get over it. Clean it up. If you can't clean it up, then, well, it'll sit there in your car and then you'll do it later.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And then when you just kind of set your expectations right, like we have gone through this too, you do finally see the light.
You do.
And when you see the light, it's so amazing. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Because you finally free yourself. And that's what it's all about with this anxiety. It's just ourselves. We are holding ourselves down. We're holding ourselves like kind of like captive to these like feelings. And whatever we're thinking, our thoughts, right, are usually end up being negative thoughts. Like a lot of times anxiety, that's what it is. So you're thinking a lot of negative thoughts, like
scary, fear.
Exactly. Things. Or as in like, I have, you know, like this health issue and it's definitely cancer. I'm going to die. Like, you know, having all these horrible thoughts like that, you can always balance them with a positive thought. And when you learn to do that, you feel so much better. You feel liberated. You feel like free. It's like, it's crazy how, much better you feel. Because even when we were going through so many things, and I was like letting it take over my life, like everything that was happening, and I was just like, I couldn't see us overcoming these things. I was just like, we're never going to be happy again. Like, that's kind of like what I thought, right? Yeah. But then once I kind of worked through that, I was like, you know what? Okay, this is a moment. There are different things we need to work through and whatever, but it's a journey. So we can't expect, when something happens, that the next day is going to be a happy day.
Yeah, no. It has to run its course.
It has to run its course. You do the best you can. That is the one thing that to do. Do the best that you can to make yourself kind of get out of that funk that you're in, whatever it is. Like I say, even if it's like going, to a park you like, or something, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, because I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, if I just go on this like super expensive vacation, like it'll help me. No, even do whatever you like.
Yeah, even if it's like watching a show.
Yeah. Even talking with family or friends, like we ended up doing so many things to just make ourselves find joy, like having a family like game night or movie night, or things to look forward to like that, just to kind of get us out of this like just like negative cycle of everything was just so everything was like bad news.
Yeah. Because we did have a time, like we said, it was only bad news. Yeah. About everything.
Yeah, exactly. So to overcome it, you just, it's so easy, so much easier than you think.
It is. It is easier, but when you're in the moment, I know it feels hard. Yeah. It feels so hard to get through it. But this is the thing, nothing can last forever. Yeah. That's just the reality. Nothing can last forever. Everything has a beginning and has an end. Yeah. And so, like I remember seeing this in school one time in like middle school, I think it was, this quote. It's like, this too shall pass. Yeah. And I always remember that. So this too shall pass. Everything that happens is going to end. Yeah. It's going to come to its end, and you'll see brighter days.
It's just a phase of your life. And
just a moment.
Our life is like, if you think about it like a book, that's just, one page. You get to turn it and you get to start fresh and everything. So it's just good to remember that, always that whatever's happening to you, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. Even people who are going through horrible things, they find a way to work through that and everything.
And also, if you need to go to therapy, just do it. Yeah. It's really that easy. Just do it, because it's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean you lack self-control or whatever you may think it is. You are a normal person. And I feel like everyone, just think about it, a lot of like these, if you want to compare, right? A lot of famous people have therapists. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you're going to get medicated, because a therapist actually can't give medication.
And that's also your own journey. Like maybe that's something you can talk about with the person. They're like, oh, because, everybody's different. Be vocal about, I don't want to try medicine or whatever, if that's your case or whatever. But like you were saying, therapy is just good. Even if you don't have a current issue going on, but you just want to talk through things with somebody. Why not? You can go to therapy. I mean, it's just like,
it's good. So
for everyone,
you can just express yourself there. It's like a non-judgmental person, because that's what it should be, a non-judgmental person who's just understanding and also gives you a different point of view. Exactly. That's what they're doing there. And they're not there to trying to convince you of anything, right? Yeah. Or tell you are diagnosed with this. They're just there to listen to you. And if they really believe something, then they'll let you know. But I think the number one thing is to take away that stigma. Yeah. And a lot of, first generation kids and stuff like that, I don't know if our parents don't know about therapy.
Exactly. And like you're saying, they're just not exposed to it. Our parents, if their older generation, they didn't, if they are an older generation, or they're just from different countries and everything, it's something that they just weren't exposed to. So then maybe they might have reservations about it. They might be like, why did you tell somebody else? A lot of foreign people are like, why did you tell somebody else your problems? Exactly. Like, don't air out our dirty laundry. Like, keep it within the family and everything. That is not what it is at all. It's just you going to get another, perspective or whatever. Really just getting it off your chest to somebody else.
Off your chest.
Now, also, if you want to just talk to like a friend, or it's just good to talk to anybody, really. Yeah. But it can be a therapist, like why not? But also, if you want to talk to a friend, a family member, sister, mother, whatever, father, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as you can talk to somebody, I think that's always beneficial. But like
someone that can give you good advice and that you feel open to talk to. Exactly. That's why I said therapy is just because you can feel open, because you don't know them. Exactly. Right? It's a person you don't even know. But I know that it could get expensive.
It can get expensive. But to just take away that stigma too, because I feel like people are like, no, I'm not to that point to go to therapist. Right. Well, no, you don't have to be like down super bad to go to a therapist. You could even go, like, I know people who go when they haven't really had anything horrible happen to them, but they're just like, you know what? I just like to do this. They have a different, they say meet them maybe every other week or every month. I don't know exactly how often it is, but they just like to have that there to talk to somebody. Yeah. And so, I mean, like, why not?
And if you are down bad, let's say, and you go and you have to go every day even or every week, remember this too, you go every day at first. Then you're going to go, at one point, you're going to go every week.
Yeah.
Then after that, they'll be like, okay, let's do every other week.
Yeah.
Let's do every 3 weeks. Like, you know what? Let's do once a month. Let's do every other month. And you slowly, like, you see you're like graduating from this kind of thing,
exactly.
And you see your improvements. And when you think you're never going to improve, then you do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom, it's like day and night. You're like, wow, I'm a completely like different person.
Yeah. Because now you have all these other tools. That's really just what just giving you tools.
So another thing that I can say is if you have fears, you have to confront your fears with anxiety. You have to confront them. You can't be avoiding them, because if you avoid your fears, you're literally fueling your anxiety.
Yeah.
So if you are scared to, I don't know, get in the car, for example, then I would say, I would suggest go to therapy, but do exposure therapy, right?
Yeah.
Even on yourself, you don't need a therapist to do this. You can do like little things of exposure therapy, and just the thing is facing it. It's so hard to face your fears, but the best thing to do is to face it. That's the only way that you're going to get through it. Is facing your fears.
Exactly. And just putting in that time too, like we were saying, even with therapy or not therapy, talking to somebody, whatever it might be, even just, having a meeting with yourself and everything, but just like your emotional well-being, like just putting in, because, we always like, we'll work out, like go to the gym and everything, but what about your brain too? Not only your brain, but like your emotions. I feel like anxiety is not like a mental thing. I'm sure that, I guess it can be categorized as that, but I feel like it's like an emotional thing, because like your emotional well-being and just being in touch with your emotions and everything.
Yeah, they say it's a mood thing.
I feel like it's like healthy to also just like focus on that, like self-care. I think that's a self-care thing also, just like, checking in with yourself, making sure how you feel, sharing how you feel if you don't feel good, working on that if you feel, anxious, sad, whatever it may be, working through those things, like why you feel that way, and just trying to push through, like you're saying, not be just avoiding everything. And then you end up like, this is like an extreme situation, of course, but you end up avoiding so many things that basically you can't even leave your room anymore, because everything has become a fear or anxiety of yours. So
and that's how it is.
You can't do that.
And that's what they say. They're like, when you start avoiding things, your world becomes so small.
Yeah.
Because you can't do this because you're anxious. You can't do that because you're anxious. You can't do this because there's so many things that you can't do.
You have your whole list of so many things you can't do. What about all your list of things you can do start shrinking?
Yep.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're worried about, let's say, taking a shower because you're going to pass out.
Yeah.
Take a shower. Multiple times a day. Every single day.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way it'll go away. And it's not going to go away the first day, second day. It won't even go away the 10th day. But maybe by the 20th day, you'll feel better.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyways, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We just wanted to talk a little bit about our anxieties, our experiences with anxiety, that we've had over the years. And just know you're not alone. Everybody has these feelings.
Yes.
It's okay to have all these different type of emotions, whether it's anxious, sad, happy. Everything is a part of life. You can't just be happy 24/7. So, and like my sister said, this too shall pass. So anything that you are going through right now in your life or in the past or whatever, just know that it is just a phase. You'll get through it. You are strong. You're going to be able to get through anything. And especially if you have the want and the will to get through it, you will.
And that's what you need. More than anything is you need that willpower.
Yeah.
And that's all that you need, and you will get through it.
Yeah.
And on purpose, we didn't say any symptoms that we had or anything like that, because we don't want to fuel it, even more. So trust and believe that any symptom that you had, we probably already had it too.
Yeah.
And we're fine, and you're going to be fine. And, we just have to be strong and move through it.
Yeah.
Don't let the fear hold you back.
And don't forget to subscribe also, because we have new episodes every single week. So we'll have another one out next week and you don't want to miss it. So please hit the subscribe button and we will see you guys next week.
Yep. See you on Wednesday.
Bye.